Good morning and greetings from Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. I am very pleased to join you today for this workshop on the submission of project applications to the CIP platform. Your attendance here today is of high relevance to IRENA as we continue to work with governments and stakeholders to help accelerate the uptake of renewable energy projects. Thank you for joining us today. Just a quick note, if needed, live interpretation is available by clicking on the icon at the bottom of your screen. IRENA's work programs throughout regions are based on specific work plans, addressing several topics of great relevance to member countries. Among these issues are the long-term planning of electricity sector, the flexibility of the system, the regulatory frameworks of the development of renewables, and very relevantly, the support for financing projects based on renewable technologies. To deliver this work out to our member countries, IRENA has relied on various implementation tools, both global and regional, that allow this support to be provided in a timely manner. One of these tools is the Climate Investment Platform, a global initiative announced during the United Nations Climate Action Summit in September 2019, with the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, and Sustainable Energy for All, SC4All, as partners and in cooperation with the Green Climate Fund. The CIP aims to scale up climate action while supporting countries in the development of more ambitious national climate targets and translating them into concrete investments on the ground. Currently, the platform has a vast network of partners, including stakeholders from governments, financial institutions, private sectors, and international organizations. This workshop today will present a detailed overview of the platform and the related process to submit projects for analysis, and is presented to national stakeholders at a crucial junction, as IRENA's project facilitation support will be highlighted during the upcoming investment forums taking place in October for West Africa and in November for Latin America. The investment forums are a key element of IRENA's strategy in its mission to facilitate investments in renewable energy. It offers an effective framework for the implementation of the CIP through a sub-regional approach. These forums work on two streams: strengthening the ability of decision makers to build a strong enabling environment for renewable energy investments, as well as to support developers in preparing bankable notes and accessing finance. I encourage you all to make use of the information that will be presented to you during this workshop and reach out to IRENA's team if you have any lingering questions on the scope of the platform, the submission process, or anything else related to project facilitation. I hope you enjoyed this webinar today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eric Ruiz-Araya. I work as the Deputy Director of the Project Facilitation Support Division in IRENA. It is a real honor for me and everybody here involved to welcome you to today's webinar on the Climate Investment Platform, which emphasizes how IRENA can support renewable energy projects in member countries to achieve the aim of reaching financial closure through the CIP platform. Next slide, please. Thank you. Here, we just want to give you a general introduction and an overview of what the Project Facilitation Support Division inside IRENA does in the 4 different areas. So to help promote the global energy transition and achieve the climate targets, in IRENA, we have been preparing and providing a suite of project facilitation support tools and services to each of our member countries. We have a focus as IRENA on working with developers to build the necessary skills through technical assistance and capacity building in order to bring strong project proposals and employ properly IRENA's available tools. So far, we have conducted 4 regional project development workshops and webinars since 2022. And in addition, we have accomplished comprehensive project information documents for 39 projects. To complement our efforts, IRENA also organized the G20 Bali Investment Forum in Barbados and an investment roundtable, which are avenues for policymakers, IDBs, financial institutions, and investors to share regional challenges, opportunities, and discuss projects on the ground. We have also conducted 2 collaborative framework meetings focusing on country needs in order to adapt the available tools to provide more targeted support. All these activities are closely embedded in 2 key platforms we have. The Energy Transition Accelerator Financing, or ETAF platform, which was announced at the COP26, and the Open Call for Projects was announced at the COP27. And this one is focused on projects that are ready to go and can be accelerated towards financial support. Today, we have 40 projects in the pipeline of the ETAF platform, several of which are under matchmaking, and then 3 actually have already finished financial closure. Since January 2023, 996.8 megawatts of projects have been supported through both the CIP and the ETAF platform towards the financial closure. Next slide, please. Thank you. For today's webinar, we will be focusing on the CIP, the Climate Investment Platform. The CIP is a joint initiative of IRENA, the United Nations Development Program, and the Sustainable Energy for All, in collaboration with the Green Climate Fund. It was an initiative launched in 2019. The mandate of the CIP is to increase the capital mobilization and renewable impact investing in developing countries. Next slide. As I mentioned, this platform has been running since 2019 with focus on projects that require a higher amount of technical assistance support. There are many 2 ways of engagement in this platform. The project proponents can request to IRENA for CIP support from public sector, private sector, and public-private partnerships. These will receive technical assistance to prepare the project information documents, as we call them PIDs, to be shared with potential matchmaking partners if the project passes our selection criteria. There are 4 main eligibility criteria, and this is important, that we need to establish from the very beginning in order to present these projects to our partners. Number 1, the project must contribute to the clean energy transition. Number 2, it has to be aligned with relevant sustainable development goals. Number 3, it has to be consistent and aligned with national climate priorities of the host country. And number 4, the project should be beyond conceptual stage and it should have at least pre-feasibility studies completed. In addition, IRENA, we invite multilateral, bilateral, and local financial institutions, as well as other development organizations that are prepared to provide different financial solutions or technical assistance or provide support during the realization of the projects to register into the CIP and become a CIP partner. In that way, we can point out project developers that are in need of such support in the right direction, making the match not only with financial institutions for project financial support, but also with technical assistance institutions or centers of excellence for project development support. Next slide, please. Here, we just want to give you a snapshot of what we have achieved so far through the Climate Investment Platform. So but today, 70 projects have been supported and 37 projects are on the matchmaking in the platform. There are 3 projects that have already reached financial closure and benefited of IRENA's technical assistance and matchmaking process through the CIP. The first one is this 3 megawatt palm oil mill affluent biogas power plant in Indonesia, which as it is today is operating commercially. Next, please. The second one is a 6.6 megawatt solar hybrid off-grid power project in Nigeria, which as of today is under construction. And the last one on the next slide is a 29.99 megawatt solar PV plant in Malaysia that as of today is also under construction. So I really would like to encourage you all and welcome our respected participants to listen to their presentations. They'll walk you through how the platform is today, what you need to do step by step to upload your projects. And at the end, we will have a Q&A session. You're also free to type your questions in the chat box, and our participants, they will be answering the questions as we go. So thank you again for listening. And now I would like to pass the presentation to my colleague Amin, who will be walking you walking you through the submission of the projects in our platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Good afternoon, good evening, and thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm going to be walking you through the online application form in order to register your project for CIP support. So firstly, we'd like to illustrate the website. It's type in here. It's www.irena.org/IRENA for CIP. And you should land in this page. And when you come to make your application, you will click on the button that says submit project right here, highlighted in the red box, which will then take you onto the application form. And the first thing you notice is that there is a note that informs you that whatever information you input within this application will be used to assess the project against the CIP funding partners criteria or any other type of partners. And this application, in addition to the supporting documents that you provide alongside it, will be the main starting point for any type of support provided moving forward. Based obviously against the eligibility criteria that was shared by Eric just now. So as you can see here, the form asks for the name of the project company first and foremost, i.e. the developer, or even a special purpose vehicle that is set up for the project. You just type in the name, give us a brief profile, address, the year of establishment, and website if available as well. Now, the country you will select here will be the country where the project company is based. Also including any information about turnover within the last year and whether any other entities are involved in this project. So the next fields to fill in would be the contact information of the main focal point behind the project, their name, position, telephone, and email address, which would be the same email address type here that we would use to correspond with the applicant. You have an option of adding a second person as well as backup. Now we get into the project information, which you would fill out the name first and foremost, and the host country of the project is where the project would be implemented. The regional cluster should be selected against the host country of the project, which you will have an option that divides each region, divides each continent by subregions, after which you move on to the technology, which you would have about almost 10 options to select within the dropdown. We have solar that's divided into 3. That would be solar PV utility scale, solar PV rooftop, or solar thermal. Then we have either wind onshore or wind offshore. And then we have biogas, bioenergy, biofuels, liquid biofuels, renewable waste, geothermal, marine energy, energy efficiency. And there's also an option to select another technology that's not included within the list. Now, when you select other, you would be asked to specify what exactly the technology would be. Then you move on to the project status, basically where the project stands at the time of the application, which is divided into the pre-feasibility stage or the feasibility stage, financing stage, construction, and operation. So you may select one of those and move on to the ownership. It is also divided into public, private, or public-private ownership of the project, or there's also an option for it being a community-owned. Then we move on to the total capacity installed, not to be mixed with any capacity generated, where you would input how much exactly is installed, and you have the option of selecting the megawatt unit right next to it. There's also an option for other, if it's not in megawatt, and you would have to specify what exactly the unit would be. Then the total project cost should be entered in millions, which includes obviously the total capex of the project to be implemented itself. Now, in this portion of the application, you would specify what type of funding requested through CIP facilitation. As you can see here, you have about 9 options in front of you, or 10 options. Once again, if you select other, you would have to specify exactly what type of support you're seeking at the time of the application. You also would specify the amount of funding requested from within this application. Sometimes we get a request for the full amount of the capex. Sometimes we get a small portion against the specific type of funding that's requested. Now, the documents to be attached is very, very important, critical for the assessment process, because as mentioned by my colleague Eric, the project would need to be past conceptual stage, i.e. at least a pre-feasibility study. And it's very, very critical that if the pre-feasibility study is conducted, approved, it should be attached to alongside the application, alongside any environmental or social impact assessment, or any other assessment or feasibility study that could be attached. We also encourage you to, many times we receive executive summaries of projects, which is a nice breakdown of all the technical and financial features as well. And we also would very, very much encourage any financial models that have been prepared to be attached as well alongside the application. Now, the form wouldn't be submitted unless you attach at least one document alongside the application. As you can see, this form is quite detailed, and now we'll get into the actual objectives of the project, where we would expect a description of the project background and the reason why it is being being developed, and what is expected, what is the expected output as well. And also we would need a clarification, more of an explanation on how the project is aligned with the SDGs. And we always would prefer as much detail as possible. Here you would expound on whether the project is either innovative or scalable, and explain a bit more about the type of technology that will be used and how it will be implemented. Now here, this portion of the form focuses on the support provided by the host government of the project, whether they are aware of the project being implemented, if for example, it's being implemented by a private entity from outside the country, how aligned are they with the local authorities regarding the project, and if there is a letter of acknowledgement or some sort of support document provided by the government, that should also be included in the attachment and also should be mentioned here. We move on to the economic, environmental, and social impact portion, which is also critical for the CIP partners. This type of information really can make a difference. So we would need as much detail, and obviously also to be backed up via documentation to be attached alongside the application. So whichever study conducted, whether it be an ESIA or anything similar of that nature, you would need to list it here for us, also referring it to the attachment. In this section, we'll talk about the current status of the project, how it is being planned for implementation, where it stands today, what is missing, and also talking more about the permits, the land acquisition necessary, and whether there's been a transmission line established and also going into depth about the grid connection or lack of, or whether it be a mini grid project. The management structure of the project is also very, very important for a CIP partner who would be interested in the project. They'd like to understand what exactly the plan is during the construction phase, during the operation and maintenance phase, and how all of that will be handled by the project team. So this once again asks for the management structure, either the SPE setup for the project itself, or the project sponsor, or any other entity cooperating with the project team to be outlined here in this section. So as mentioned, if the project has completed specific documents which are listed here, you would need to select what is available at this point, whether that be a PPA is already secured, if the land permit is already secured, feasibility study. So you're able to select as much of these as you have ready, and it would be very, very helpful and much encouraged if whichever option here is selected, it is corresponded by the attachment as well of the within the application itself. Apologies, I keep going dark, but I'm almost done. So here in this section, we'd like to have as much information about the business model, how the information about the intended off-taker, and just a bit more in depth into what would happen after the project is successfully implemented. In this section, we would need some information about the financials of the project, whether that, and to be very, very clearly illustrated. And this section is actually the most important section, where we need a corresponding attachment to further establish whether the project is viable from the CIP perspective, and matching it against the criteria of our partners. So you'd be asked for a debt service coverage ratio using the P50 model. And it is very, very important that if a financial institution has already expressed interest or been approached by the project team, to be listed here as well, because that obviously adds a layer of viability to the project itself. So this would be the last question, and we have a disclaimer here noting that whichever information is shared with us through this application will be kept confidential, and whenever the project or the application moves ahead alongside the process, which will be further explained right now by my colleague, we would only communicate information about the project to outside entities after signing an NDA with the actual project team, and getting clearance from them whenever information is shared externally. So with that being said, I come to the conclusion, which ends with the submit button. And when the application is received or sent to us, typically we will get back to you within 5 to 8 working days, with usually asking maybe to set up a call if we need some certain clarifications, or sometimes we would send a list of questions that we would need to move the project alongside up the process. So now I will pass it on to my colleague Huy, who's going to explain how project applications are assessed and how support of the CIP is administered. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amin, and hello, good morning and good evening to all the distinguished participants. My name is Hui, so I'm also working with the Climate Investment Platform. It's my great pleasure here to present to you about what's going to happen about the project facilitation cycle and the review process. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as like you already know what's about the projects, how to submit a project, so you might be wondering what's going to happen after I submit a project. So that's where our efforts is coming into the cycle. So once you submit a project, we will have internally pre-screening of the registered projects within the certain days, and then of course we have our panel review on the decision to support or what kind of efforts we should put into there. And then once this project has been decided to support, and then we will assign the transaction advisor who will work with the project sponsors together on this project information document. And once this is a kind of standard document, I will explain it later in a few slides following. And once we finish this document, and it will be conducted internal and external reviews to get a final version of the PID. And once the PID being finalized, and of course, under the consent of all of you as the project developers, we will present it to the most suitable or matchmaking them with the suitable partners on our platform. And then we will introduce the dialogues and for further discussions on the project. So that's the kind of project facilitation cycle we are providing. Next slide, please. So as my colleague Eric already mentioned about how to be eligible for the IRENA CIP support, as you can see, it needs to be contributing to different transitions or goals or SDGs. And here, maybe I can just briefly let you see the right side of slides is about the project assessment criteria. So as you can see, if you want your projects to have more higher possibility to be selected for our support, then maybe if you can prepare your projects be mature or with more documents be ready. So it's a readiness. Second is a project team. Like if the project team has more experience or tracking records, it will be very good. And third is the technical features. So if you have already done your homework, like the feasibility studies and the technical designs for the different various technologies, will be good. And then of course, impact and additionality is very critical because we are creating the local values or job creations for these projects to be more sustainable and contributing to the SDG goals as well. And of course, it's the project, if it's more commercially and financially already feasible or have more features on this, and then the projects can be, we could provide more support and make it more being ready for our potential finances on the platform. And also it has to be contributing to SDGs and NDCs. So next slide. So as we already experienced the whole cycle of our project facilitations and also the different eligibility criteria and assessment criteria. So among them, we can see one of the key words we're mentioning is the support we're providing as project information document. So how to prepare this investment ready business proposal and make it be ready for our potential financiers. I will explain here one by one. So the content has a few components. Maybe you would remember by heart. It's the introduction, country context, project descriptions, financing plans, contractual structures, risk and mitigation analysis, and of course, appendices as well. So next slide, please. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, thank you. So this is, you kind of from left side is kind of like the first cover of the project information document we are preparing. So this is a kind of standard document we prepare for each of developers if we decide to support. And together working with you, it's kind of the element has been selected based on a variety of relevant internationally recognized resources, including, for example, the World Bank's RISE indicators. And it has to cater to most requirements and any potential investor finances may have. And of course, it has been developed based on various experience of IRENA staff and in project bankability, how to make it be more attractive for our potential partners. Next slide, please. So this is a country context because many of the countries in developing economies, we have to provide an overview of this electricity sector in the country, including various energy mix or different productions or energy demand and consumptions. So it serves as the purpose for the potential investors to understand the importance of the projects and maybe also check if it has been priority for the countries to go forward. Next slide, please. Yeah, and then from the country context, we will go to the project sponsor side. So you will have the various part. First, it will showcase who originated the project. It's kind of where is the project coming from. And also if we have to build the interest of the investors. And of course, it needs to show the qualified teams like tracking records we already mentioned period. And also the projects needs to present certain standard of stability. And finally, financial models is also very critical in order to make the projects being more ready for investors. Next slide, please. So how do we do and kind of forge this kind of project descriptions. So we will of course write about how these projects come into life. First, different stakeholders and partnership is very critical to mention in this document, like what kind of forged partnerships. And in addition to that, stakeholder consultations is also very critical. But among all of them, we think community acceptance is always come to the key because it's very important. Many of the renewable projects relevant to the resources. So upon the community's acceptance, it can really make these projects has high ratio of success. So this is a few elements. Next slide, please. Yeah, next, thank you. So this is the technical specifications, and so you can see there are different locations and accessibilities and relevant resources. So off-grid or on-grid, especially the grid studies, we were really looking at it because in order to make these projects really happening on the ground. So a few elements, especially the grid studies and how much could be connected to the grid is one of the very key elements we are looking at. And we are also going to write it in this document as well. Next slide, please. And also, in addition to that, environment and social impact assessment, it's also needs to be very key element, especially for international investors, especially our development agencies and concessional loan providers. So if there's any adverse impacts on the surroundings and also what would be the benefits to both the local economy and the environment. And it's also very critical to prepare an environment and social risk and adequate action tables, and including if any local stakeholder consultation have been undertaken as well, so that it will be very complete and thorough studies about this environment social impact assessment. Next slide, please. And then we come to the main economic features of the project. So as we can see here, in the document, we need to also prepare information for what is a CapEx, OpEx as well, because some of the submission applicants, they may not even have the cost breakdown, or they may have very clear how much cost gonna be for this power plant. So what be the revenue and the profitability, and adding graphs to highlight the key result of financial modeling is also very critical here. And what is the project schedules and current advancements. So this is kind of the cash flows we need also to present here as well, especially upon the debt service coverage ratio, as already mentioned. Next slide, please. Yeah. And then it comes to the costs and financing. So how much would different elements and phases cost? So we may have the project development and we may have construction. What are the planned resources supposed to coming from? So there are key features of each financing sources like expected equity IRR and also interest rate for the debt and maybe local financing elements as well. So any undertaken discussions on financial structuring to increase the project's bankability is very key here, because this is really the elements we are structuring the deals to make it more easily to be reaching the financial closure. Next slide, please. And then contractual structure is also key here to write, because contractual ties of the project and the social stakeholders. So we may have the different authorizations from concerning the PPAs and or acquiring of the land or any other licensing that might be needed, and even all this EPC and OEM contract insurance guarantees. So for all these contracts, we are very key to know what is stage and how many you have been acquired, because they are really the key, because some of the licensing, even PPA negotiations might very long time, or some of the PPA might expire within this year. So the plant has to be accomplished this year. So these are a few elements that we really pay attention to when we write in the document, because that's where the investors are focusing on looking at. Next slide, please. So, and then just last two elements. So one is the risk and sensitivity analysis. So in addition to all these elements we described before, this is one of the elements we have to put down in the document. For example, we need to undertake accessibility analysis with some of the main parameters, for example, tariffs, or capex or O&M or financing cost, because we may say it's increased or decreased 10%, 5%, and what's going to be the impact on the EBITDA, or what's going to be the impact on the equity IRR. So that's will be having so that investors roughly will know within these ranges what kind of risks and what is sensitivity, how sensitive it is to the returns. And these are the key risks, and of course at the end we will prepare main risk metrics so that all these kind of various risks will be listed out as well, so the investor can easily to see and spotify. And next slide, please. So last, it's all the slides, the last one. So after we finishing all the main content, there might be additional documents, for example, the licensing, detailed licensing, original documents copy, or various more tracking records or information on the sponsor's capability. All these documents additional we will put into the appendices, so that if investor wants to really check or into the details, they can just go back to there. So now I come to the conclusion of my presentation. I think I will hand over to Ashani, and he will walk you through the next sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Hui, for that presentation, and thank you, colleagues. My name is Ashani Bartley, and I'm also a member of the Climate Investment Platform of the Project Facilitation and Support Division of IRENA. And I will be going through the other side of the CIP, which is the partners and the matchmaking portion. Next slide, please. So at present, we have quite a few different lists of partners to the CIP, and the group include academia, NGO, research and technology groups, financial partners, which is the most important, and I will go to details on that in a bit. We also have manufacturers, suppliers, and service providers, technical advisory partners, as well as similar platforms. Now, the most important partner that we have is the financial partner. And why this is most important is because once the projects come through the pipeline from the other colleagues, we reach the stage where we call the matchmaking. And we have a list of financial partners who has provided us their eligibility criteria in advance by informing us of what they're looking for, such as the technology of interest, the capacity of interest, the region that they're interested in, the amount of funding that they're looking to provide, the type of funding that they're looking to provide, the ownership structure of the project, amongst other eligibility criteria. Now, from our experiences, what we find is that financiers are looking for projects that have strong permits and contracts that have already been secured. There's a strong pre-feasibility and feasibility studies that have already been completed. There's a strong PPA with a trusted off-taker, and I'll go a bit more in details on this. Many times we've seen projects that has a PPA, but there are issues with the credibility of the off-taker. Our partners are looking for projects that have credit-worthy off-takers, with off-takers who they believe are able to pay the revenues of these projects over the life cycle of the project, whether it be 20, 25 years or more. They're also looking for very clear financial models. And this is some of the technical advice that we provide here at IRENA on how to better structure financial models to ensure that there's a clear outline of the revenue potential of the projects, of the cost of the projects, etc. And this is also good to give financiers the comfort that the project will be able to pay its debt over its useful life. The risk has to be identified for all these projects, and these risks have to have mitigating factors. For example, the financiers are looking for projects that, if the country context has things such as high inflation, if there's a currency risk, etc., the project developer has to have some sort of risk mitigation factor that will take care of this, which will give the financiers a better comfort in providing loan or equity and believing that this will be it over the life of the project. And finally on this, the separation of the EPC and the developer. Now, we've seen a few projects that have come to us where the EPC is also the developer of the project, and this breeds a conflict of interest. The conflict of interest is that there may be strong bias during the construction phase, as the EPC and the developer themselves are one and the same. So having a trusted third-party EPC could do very well in being attractive to investors. Next slide. Next slide. So now we go into the matchmaking process. And the matchmaking process is after you've already had the support of the CIP team, and we have concluded along with you that the project information document that we create is suitable. On the matchmaking side, we review the PID to check for the project characteristics. Then we review the financier's eligibility criteria. So we're looking, for example, at a project that is, say, 50 megawatts and it's solar, and we're looking at financiers who are looking for projects that are 50 megawatts, that are also solar, and that are looking at the geography that the project is located in. Once this comparison is complete and there's a match, we then introduce this project to the financier. Now, the financier will decide and tell us if they're interested in this project or not. Once that decision is taken and communicated to us, if the financier is not interested, then we introduce the project to other financiers to see if they're also interested. But if the financier is interested, it is at this point that we introduce the developer to the financier to continue direct negotiations with the aim of getting to financial close. It must be noted that the financier themselves will do their own due diligence in addition to the work that IRENA has done to ensure that the project is suitable for them. And at this stage, it is explicitly required from the financier or the project developer for us to continue working in the direct negotiations. Usually this is where we remove ourselves from the process. Next slide, please. Now, for financiers and other partners who are thinking of partnering with us in the drive to improve the uptake of renewable energy, we have a very simple registration form online, and you can also find it at IRENA for CIP partners registration. And we will ask things such as the institution's name, the type of institution that you are. Next slide. And things such as the country, and then we'll ask for a brief explanation of what it is that you're interested in. And it is at this point that you should tell us if you're interested in funding projects, you're interested in providing technical assistance, etc. Once we review this form, we will get in touch with you. Usually the next step is via email to get in touch with you or reach out to have a meeting. Once this first contact, we have decided that we are a match, we're a fit, we would share what we call the CIP checklist, which would ask for more detailed information on what it is that you're looking for and what it is that you're looking to provide. Next slide, please. And of course, we would ask on this form for the relevant geographical focus that you have. So you'll tell us if you're interested in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, or if you're interested in the world globally. And then we would also use this to reduce and to significantly check what kind of projects we introduce to you and check that it meets your criteria. Next slide, please. Now we move to the investment forums, and the investment forums is a relatively new initiative by IRENA. It's a joint initiative by the Project Facilitation and Support Division and the CEP division of IRENA. Our first investment forum was last year, which was held in Bali, Indonesia, and focused on the Southeast Asian space. And our second in Barbados focused on the Caribbean. The third will be in Latin America, in Uruguay, focusing on Latin American countries from Mexico all the way down to Argentina and Chile. Now, what the investment forum does is, on one hand, it brings together high-level leaders, ministers, to speak about transitioning to a just renewable energy future. It also brings together financiers and developers to speak about the problems and the issues and the concerns that they're facing, and to talk about opportunities to move ahead. But most importantly, it has on-site matchmaking. And what this matchmaking is we bring project developers who have active projects in the region, and we also bring financiers who are looking to provide funding in the region. So this may be financiers who are based in the region, or financiers who are focused on the region, but based in other places. And we have financiers and the developers book one-on-one meetings to discuss in detail the project, and then try to find a way to move forward. The aim of this is to, in some cases, break the ice, to give that initial introduction, with the aim of continuing the discussions after the investment forum and getting to financial close. And we've seen this model being quite successful from the first investment forum in Bali. The other portion of the investment forum is that we also have a project exhibition. And this exhibition is where developers are stationed in one room in an exhibition setting, and participants at the investment forum can go into the room, interact freely with the developers. So it could be EPCs who are going in, it could be other developers who are going into partner, it could be financiers who are going into partner, to speak with the developers, ask about the project that they're developing, and to see how best, if they can partner in taking it to the next level. So that's it for the investment forum. And as I said, the next one is coming up in Latin America, in Uruguay, in November of this year. Next slide, please. So thank you very much. This concludes the presentation of the Climate Investment Platform. We'll now allow a few minutes for question and answers. So if you have questions, you can raise them in the chat, or you can raise them in the question and answer tab.
Perhaps, Ashani, I think we could go through some of the questions that have been already answered.
So I see
benefit.
a question asking, how long is the process since the beginning until financial close? Well, this is dependent on the project itself. The examples that we have, we've seen projects that have come to our attention in 2020, and they've just achieved financial close in 2023. And we've seen projects that have achieved financial close in a very short time, less than a year. So the process is significantly based on your project, meaning what do you have ready, what stage you're at the project. If your project is at the stage where all it needs is financing, then the financial close will be quite short. But if there's still a significant amount of technical work that needs to be done, then it may take longer than the other projects.
Thank you very much, Ashani. And if I just may add to that, that when it comes to the project information development phase, document development phase, how quick that document is developed is really dependent on the rate of response between the transaction advisor developing the PID and the project team, because the advisor would use a lot of the information retrieved from the proponents to implement in the document. So the faster the responses are between the advisor and the applicant, the quicker the process would move on to the project would move on to the matchmaking process and be introduced to the different partners.
There is an interesting question on the chat box. I'm gonna answer for everybody's benefit. It is specifically about non-reimbursable support or grants. Through the climate investment platform, as per our experience, there are partners that are interested on providing grants for projects. However, whenever a project is submitted, the financials of the project need to be sound and sustainable. It will be very challenging. I will say, like, it wouldn't be possible based on the history of this platform to support projects that require 100% grant. We have supported projects in the past, but usually the percentage of grant that is given is between the 5–10% is a bit high of the total project cost. So different kinds of funding are there, loans, commercial loans, but it is reimbursable funding. For grants, it has to be a small amount of the project, not the total amount of the project.
Eric, this is the second or third time we've got the question between CIP and ETAP. Difference between them. Would you care to answer that, please?
Sure. The CIP and ETAP, both of them have the essential same function, which is to allow project developers to have a platform to submit their projects for us to facilitate the matchmaking with financial institutions that are interested in financing projects with such characteristics. The main difference, however, is that the ETAP is aimed for projects of bigger scale in terms of power, megawatts, as well as CapEx. We are looking for projects in the ETAP that, if we are talking about private sector projects, CapEx that goes beyond $25 million, public sector projects, CapEx that goes beyond $10 million. In the case of the CIP, the Climate Investment Platform, there we can have projects over smaller scale in terms of CapEx and megawatts. Also, the ETAP is an accelerator. So the projects that we'll canalize through the ETAP are projects that require very little technical assistance, that have the social and impact and environmental studies complete, that have feasibility studies complete, permits complete, and acquisition close to completion. So our projects that we can accelerate towards matchmaking and financial closure. The projects that are usually submitted through the ETAP, through the CIP, are projects that require a little more technical assistance from our side, projects that perhaps have pre-feasibility studies completed, but feasibility studies are still ongoing, and projects that will require some guidance from IRENA in order to build up their case and make it attractive to financial institutions. However, submitting a project in one platform doesn't exclude the project from the other platform. If a project is submitted through the CIP and it fulfills the characteristics of the ETAP, we will get back to the project proponent and ask for permission to pass the project to the other platform so we can accelerate towards finance. And vice versa is the same. If a project is submitted through the ETAP, but it is more suitable given its characteristics to the CIP, we will do the passage of that project after asking and the approval of the project proponent from the ETAP to the CIP. There is another question in the chat about the cost for technical assistance given by IRENA. All the services that are provided by IRENA through both our platforms, as well as the technical assistance, are free of cost. We are a non-profit international agency, so whatever assistance is provided by IRENA to the project proponents are free of cost to the project proponents. Okay, if there are no other questions, I see that there are a few questions in the chat box that are being answered by our team. But we encourage you to visit our website. You have it here, irena.org/IRENA for CIP. There you will find the approval criteria. There you will find also the presentations that we are giving you. And there you will find the access to register either as a project proponent or as an ETAF partner for technical assistance or development support. So please visit our website. Keep tuned because we will be submitting a survey about this webinar for you to just add anything that you think that might be useful, as well that might be implemented in the upcoming webinars. And also remember to keep tuned for the link because all this is going to be published in YouTube as well as the presentation. Next September 14, we will be holding a an energy transition acceleration finance platform, the ETAF second edition webinar that is going to be given in Spanish, mainly focused for Latin America and Spain. So thank you, everybody. This brings our webinar to a close.